all. Welcome lecture on the impossible spy. My name is Rabbi Avraham Cohen. I welcome our audience on this very, very auspicious day. We are only a few days before Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of our new year in our Jewish calendar marks a very special time in the hearts of many of our Jewish people and Jewish comrades around the world. And I could not find a more appropriate time in order to introduce this very special lecture hosted by the Ben Weider Memorial Lecture Series in order to bring about the specialty of our Jewish people, bringing about how our Jewish people go beyond our call of duty in order to keep unity and to keep together as Am Yisrael Chai, as Chaverim Kol Yisrael. I'd like to share with you just a very short Torah thought in honor of Rosh Hashanah. As everybody knows, the whole Rosh Hashanah holiday surrounds the idea of the shofar. We blow the shofar in the morning before the Musaf. We blow the shofar during the Musaf prayers while we're standing during the silent Amidah Shemona Esrei, while the repetition of the Shemona Esrei. And it's a very, very special moment during the prayers and the services of Rosh Hashanah. And I want to ask a very simple question. I'm not sure if many of you have ever thought of it, but why do we use the horn of a ram to do the shofar? Why not? There's so many more horns out there on so many more animals and so many different animals. What's the message of the ram, and why do we use the ram's horn versus any other horn that we do not use? So our rabbis in their intelligence and Torah aspect explain this in a very, very special way. And what they explain this is as follows: the ram, as you see, the ram horn is a horn that actually bends upwards, and we take the smaller part, the smaller hole of the horn, we put it to our mouth, and we blow out the blows and the cries of the shofar. What does it signify? Why do we do the ram's horn? What is that horn which actually aims to above, to Shamayim, to the heavens, to God? What does it signify for us? It signifies for us a very simple but important lesson, and that is that us, the Jewish people, God gave us a very special day, which means it doesn't matter what kind of background you have. It doesn't matter what kind of education or non-education you had in Jewish tradition while you were young, or it doesn't matter how much you actually practice in Judaism. The shofar, the call of the shofar, gives the sign and gives the symbol to every Jew that Judaism doesn't judge a book by its cover. We don't look at the outside of how a Jew is. Oh, this one is better and this one is less better. This one is good and this one is less good. No. The call of the shofar is a very simple call, is a very unique and simple call that comes from the depth of a person. And therefore, wherever you are in life, wherever you are in Yiddishkeit, wherever you are in Judaism, if you come to shul, and this year we understand that coming to shul will be quite a challenge. So many people are doing their services at home or doing special services at home. And so by staying at home or staying within a safe environment, going to synagogue, whether the minyan is outside or inside, according to the rules and regulations of Health Canada. But the idea behind it is by praying in your heart, by closing your eyes and asking for a blessing, and asking for the year to come along with health and with health and with peace of mind and with prosperity and with the long life and with as well for your children and for your wife and so on and so forth, is what the message of the shofar is. All you have to do is cry out a simple cry. All you have to do is express a simple expression that comes actually from the depth of your heart. And therefore, since that ram's horn has that shape of aiming towards the upwards, the rabbis and the Torah in its infinite wisdom chose the ram's horn in order to blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, nobody is excluded. Nobody is out of the circle. Everybody's included on Rosh Hashanah. And that is the beauty of what our tradition teaches us, and our rabbis teach us, that actually on the day of Rosh Hashanah, which means on Friday night, it's a mean of a proposal that God is proposing to us, the Jewish people, for us to become, if you want, his wife, his spouse. As is brought down many times in the Torah, God is the groom, the Jewish people is the bride, and the Torah is the ketubah. The Torah is the ketubah. So by God proposing, so to speak, on the Rosh Hashanah night, which is this year Friday night, asking us to become one with God, to cleave to God, to follow in his mitzvot, we are answering back to God. How do we answer? What is the answer that we're giving to God? The blow of the shofar. What does the blow of the shofar mean? A simple cry, a simple simple expression from the depth of our heart. God, we are with you. God, we believe in you. God, we will be with you for the rest of our lives. And therefore, from the time that God actually does the proposal on the night of Rosh Hashanah, until we until we blow the shofar on the day of Rosh Hashanah, which is this year won't be on Shabbat, because Shabbat we don't blow the shofar, but on Sunday, at that time, we accept upon ourselves the crowning, and we crown God, and we accept upon ourselves his kingship for the year. At that moment, the blessing comes to us, the blessing comes to the Jewish people, the blessing comes to all of humanity around the world through the blowing of the shofar. So it's a very special moment, and therefore, I thought, when we were organizing myself with the committee at the Chaim Mushta seminar, the Ben Weider Educational Center, when would be an appropriate time to introduce and to bring about this special lecture with the brother, the only surviving brother of Eli Cohen, the impossible spy in Israel. We thought that this is the right time before Rosh Hashanah to bring out Jewish pride, Jewish continuity, and Jewish chaverim kol Israel, achdut ben Israel. At this time, I would like to just do a very, very brief description on Ben Weider lecture series. Ben Weider was a very personal friend of mine. He passed away about 12 years ago in 2008. As a matter of fact, his yahrzeit is coming up now on Sukkot in a couple of weeks. We're going to be celebrating his 12th anniversary, his 12th yahrzeit. And Ben Weider accomplished a lot here in the city. He accomplished a lot in the community across Canada and obviously around the world. It was through the influence of Ben Weider that today we have the Ben Weider Educational Center, we have the Joe Weider Torah Campus, we have the Ben Weider Community Center, which is also known as the Y here in Montreal. In 1975, he was awarded the highest award that Canada could award, which was the Order of Canada. And his actual accomplishments, I once spoke to him. You know, I used to go to his office every Friday. We used to put on the tefillin. We used to say the Shema Yisrael, and we used to sit down and talk at times when he was able to talk. And many a times he would tell me, Rabbi, I want you to know, when we started our business, when we started our venture, myself and Joe, we just wanted to do the right thing. We wanted to do what is best to do. And therefore, everything else fell into place, which means that in his business, he had a passion. He had he wanted this accomplishment of the IFBB, the International Federation of Bodybuilders, to create something which will make a difference to people. And he did it. And he did it for the sake of bringing health and bringing enhancement to the life of many people around the world. And the same way he told me that when we did our IFBB and the International Federation of Bodybuilding, we did it for the sake of bringing goodness and health and enhancement to people's lives. So too, by building the center, the Ben Weider Educational Center, the Joe Weider Torah Campus, and the Ben Weider Community Center. His sole idea was to enhance the lives of as many people in our Jewish community, whether it be in education, whether it be in sports, whether it be in ethics and values. Ben Weider was a visionary. Ben Weider was a good man. And it is a privilege that we could today continue his legacy by continuing what he really wanted all along in his life, which means to reach out to as many people as possible and make their life a better life. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator. The moderator for today, as many of you read probably in the advertising coming up to today's lecture, Tommy Schnurmacher is not a stranger to many of the Jewish community and the community at large in Montreal. He was a radio host for 25 years, over 25 years. He's a dear friend of mine. He's been at my home many times for Shabbat and for the Sukkah. And I want to introduce our moderator for today's Tommy Schnurmacher, a child of Holocaust survivors. He was born in Budapest, the host of a highly rated daily 3-hour radio talk show for more than 20 years on CJAD. He's also a journalist and an author. He is currently on a Zoom tour of North America talking about his mother, second generation issues, and the Hungarian refugee experience. His latest book is a memoir entitled Makeup Tips from Auschwitz: How Vanity Saved My Mother's Life. It is available on both Indigo and on Amazon. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and it is my privilege to introduce to you this afternoon/evening our moderator, Mr. Tommy Schnurmacher. Tommy, take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Rabbi Cohen. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce a very special man indeed, Avraham Cohen. He is the youngest surviving brother of Israel's most successful and famous spy. Some have said Israel might not exist today were it not for Eli Cohen, who was executed as a spy in Syria in 1965, but not before he succeeded in passing on information that likely saved his country. Under the alias Kamel Amin Thaabet and the guise of a wealthy Arab businessman, he penetrated the highest echelons of the Syrian government. He did it so well, he did it with such brilliance, that he was ultimately being considered for the position of Syrian Deputy Minister of Defense. The intelligence that he gathered before his arrest is said to have been an important factor in Israel's success in the Six-Day War. Our guest today, Eli's only surviving sibling, Avraham Cohen, will be telling Eli's story tonight. In Avram's younger years, he served with Israel's military intelligence between 1968 and 2008. He held several important positions at the Industrial Development Bank of Israel. Before retiring, he was a senior economist in charge of feasibility studies and economic surveys for the Israeli economy. As a retiree, he volunteers at the Weizmann Historical Archive, doing computerization and translation of documents, and he is very active in the Association for the Preservation of the Legacy of Eli Cohen. Avraham Cohen has said, "I feel I have a mission and a duty to honor Eli's memory. It's painful to talk about, but I also feel it's a great honor to be his brother, and I feel a sense of warmth when I share his story." And that's exactly what Avraham will be doing today, sharing that amazing story with us. More than 50 years later, Avraham Cohen is still trying to get his brother's remains returned to Israel. He's going to share his family's experience as well as that ongoing struggle of having Eli's remains returned home. Since Eli's capture and death, he has become a national hero in Israel. Many streets and neighborhoods have been named for him. His son's bar mitzvah back in 1977 was attended by Prime Minister Menachem Begin, Defense Minister Ezra Weitzman, Chief of Staff Mordechai Gur, and several Mossad operatives. A memorial stone has been erected for Cohen in the Garden of the Missing Soldiers in Mount Herzl in Jerusalem. Ladies and gentlemen, Avraham Cohen.
Thank you very much. I am pleased to tell the story of my brother Eli, late brother Eli Cohen. and I will show you a presentation that I made especially for you. How can I share it? Okay.
It's good. You're good.
Eli Cohen was born in 6th of December 1924, and he passed away on May 18, 1965 in Syria. How can I show the presentation here?
You go Alt-Tab to the next screen and continue showing your presentation.
My parents were born in Aleppo, Syria, and in 1910, as children, they moved to Alexandria, Egypt. We were 8 siblings, 6 brothers and 2 sisters. Eli was born after my older sister, Odette, and I am the youngest among my siblings. The picture was taken, this is my picture, was taken by and colorized by Eli in 1948 when I was 3 years old in Alexandria. Here is a picture of Alexandria when we were there. You see the streets, it doesn't look like Arab country. It was a very modern city, Alexandria and Cairo together, two very modern and European style. Here you can see Eli in 1937 when he was born, bar mitzvah, and this is the main synagogue in Alexandria. The Zionist organization thrived and were allowed to exist until the declaration of the statehood of Israel in 1948. You see the flag of Israel in a camp near Alexandria of Achalutz HaTzair, and Eli was a guide in this movement in Alexandria as a young student at that time. You can see him here with Professor Aryeh Schlossberg. He passed away a few months ago. He was Ashkenazi Jew, born in Alexandria. There was a community of about 20,000 from the whole Jewish community in Egypt was about 70,000 only. And about 25,000 were Ashkenazi Jews who came and settled in Egypt. And this was his friends, Professor Aryeh Schlossberg. Here is Eli. And this is Rafael Rekanati, the owner of Discount Bank in Israel. He was sent from Israel to be a guide of the youngest children in Alexandria. Here is the son of the chief rabbi of Alexandria. He was young child at that time, and Eli was his guide at that time. Here you see Eli in the University of, with his friends in the University of Alexandria. That was the chief rabbi of Alexandria, Dr. Moshe Ventura. He was a Zionist rabbi at the time that the chief rabbi of Egypt was not accepted the Zionism, and he refused that he said that it will endanger the community of the Jewish people in Egypt, But this rabbi was a Zionist and encouraged the young people to make aliyah and to immigrate to Israel. And Eli learned from him the Talmud, and he had a school for the children. It's called Midrashiyat Rambam. He teached about the Maimonides school, about all connected with Rabbi Maimon, Moshe ben Maimon. But the situation in Egypt changed after the declaration of the statehood of Israel in 1948. And before, you see the flag of Israel in camps, and there was nothing against the Jews and nothing against the atmosphere were very pro-Judaism, well, we lived in freedom and everything was right. But after the declaration of the statehood of Israel, the situation changed immediately, and my parents decided that the good life in Alexandria came to an end, and sent 3 of my brothers, my brother Maurice, who was younger than Eli, my sister Odette, she was older than Eli, and Ezra. The 3 of my siblings immigrated to Israel, and Ezra joined the army, and he was in the battle of when in 1948, the end of the battles with against the Arab at that time. And after them, the rest of the family immigrated to Israel at the end of 1949, but Eli remained alone in Egypt. He said to my parents that he want to finish his study and he will follow us after several months. But it was only an excuse because he had a secret duty there we didn't know at that time. When we were in Israel and Eli remained in Egypt, there was in 1952, several years after we left Egypt, there was a revolution. At that time, when we were living in Egypt, the ruler of Egypt was King Farouk. You see here pictures here in a Time magazine. But there was a revolution headed by Gamal Abdel Nasser and General Naguib, and they thrown out the King Farouk. He took his money and went to Italy and lived there about 10 years, and he died in Italy. And Eli was alone in Egypt, and at that time also Nasser, the president of Egypt, signed an agreement with the British that the British will withdraw their troops back of Egypt, and that's endangered Israel at that time. So there was an operation, Israeli operation, trying to bring the British to reconsider the outgoing of Egypt. It was a stupid operation. They recruited students from Alexandria, Jewish students from Alexandria and Cairo, to make some sabotage in British and American targets in Egypt. But the Egyptian caught one of the students with a bomb in his pocket, and that was blood in entrance of one of the cinemas in Alexandria, and they caught about 13 people, 13 students that were involved in this operation. Eli was also arrested with them, but he was released after 2 days because he was not connected with this sabotage operation. But he was also he had other duties of spying in Egypt, but they didn't. He was released for lack of evidence, and he continued to work secretly in Egypt before he came to Israel. And after that was the Suez crisis. Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal, and thus making a crisis between France and Britain against Egypt at that time. So they make a treaty with Israel, and we occupied within 3 days the peninsula of Sinai at that time, and the French and the British bombarded the Suez Canal at that time in July 56. After this battle, the Egyptian decided to all the foreigners living in Egypt to they expelled all the foreigners, and Eli was detained with the others. He thought that they captured him because of his security or spying, but after 2 days he understood that he was detained with thousands of people, and he was thrown away from Egypt. He signed a document that he give up all our properties in Egypt, and he came to Italy, and from Italy he immigrated to Israel. Eli arrived in Israel on February 8, 57. It was Friday night when he came to, and we make Kabbalat Shabbat at that time. We celebrated the Shabbat, and I was separated from Eli when I was 3 years old, or 3.5 years old, and I reunited with Eli when I was 11 years old. I saw him, and again when I was 8 years old. When I was 11 years old, sorry. We didn't know. The family didn't know anything why he stayed in Egypt while all his family was in Israel. I will show you. This is it was a memorial day after 10 years when he passed away, and the late Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin told us the real reason why he stayed in Egypt. It's in Hebrew, I will translate it later.
אמש נערכה בבת ים עצרת זיכרון במלאת 10 שנים לעלייתו של אלי כהן על הגרדום בסוריה. ראש הממשלה יצחק רבין, שנתן חלק בטקס, עמד בדבריו גם על היבטים ידועים פחות בקורות חייו של אלי כהן.
אינני בא להוסיף על כל מה שנכתב עליו, אך אני יכול לומר כי סיפור גבורתו המלא והאמיתי טרם נכתב. נשאלת השאלה, מה עיכב את צאתו של אלי כהן ממצרים, כך שהוא הגיע למעשה עם הגל האחרון של העולים משם? התשובה היא אחת, אהבתו העזה של אלי כהן לעמו ולמולדתו. בגלל האהבה העזה זו, התנדב אלי להמשיך ולהתגורר במצרים, תחת צל הרדיפות של שנות ה-50, לפני ואחרי מבצע קדש. מטרתו הייתה הצלת יהודי מצרים ועלייתם ארצה. שם הוא נשאר כפעיל עלייה בסתר, עד גמר שליחותו, שהוא הטיל על עצמו, תוך רגש אחריות לו.
The Prime Minister said at that time, I have a story about this. When my brother Maurice stayed on the line to get visa to get out of Egypt at that time, his friends said to him, "You should stay on the line. Your brother is giving all of us permission to get out of Egypt. Why you have to stay on the line?" So he went to my brother and asked him about this. Why don't you help the family? He said, "You are crazy? You want to put me in a jail? I'm a student. I have no connection with it." But 10 years after his death, the Prime Minister said what his real task was in Egypt. He rescued the community, the Egyptian Jewish community in Egypt, and gave them, documents to get out of Egypt, false documents and other documents. He was connected with the intelligence in Israel, and he, until almost the last Jew left Egypt, he didn't left Egypt. He came to Israel only in February 1957. And 5 days after his arrival to Israel, he was summoned to the Mossad, and he written a resume, 8 pages in French, and it's written here in Hebrew. It was translated in 25 of February 57. He written this in 13 of February 57, and page number 3 from his resume was sent to a graphologue to examine it. And he, on the last page, he told the Mossad about the languages he mastered. He said, "I mastered the languages Arabic, French, English, Italian, and Hebrew fluently. I speak and understand Greek and Spanish. My knowledge of the Arabic language is perfect. I mastered the Egyptian dialect, Syrian dialect, and Lebanese dialect." And at the end of this document, he signed that he are ready to be sent to any mission in any Arab country that he will be asked to. But once it became clear that Eli was involved in the Lavon affair, which I told you before, his candidacy to Unit 188 was disqualified because he was familiar to the Egyptian intelligence. He was detained in 1954. He was directed to another intelligence unit to work as a translator from Arabic to Hebrew. And a year later, 1958, he got a job as an accountant in a large company in Tel Aviv. In the end of August 1959, he married Nadia, and a few months before he was married, he was fired from his job. It was a false firing, you know, from his job. They wanted to recruit him to a mission, and why now and why not when he came to Israel and he was a bachelor at that time? The reason is that Egypt and Syria in 1958 became one country. They united together, and the aim of this union is to attack Israel from the north and from Egypt from the south, and Syria from the north. So they remembered that they interviewed Eli when he came to Israel, and they come to him and ask him to get this job. But he said, just now I get married and my wife is pregnant now. Then I was ready to do it. Now I cannot do it. But they make a false, of the firing from his job, and he was no choice, and he joined the unit number 188. He they get a course of 6 months, about 6 months, for all the what connected to spying. I told you before why Eli was recruited now, because in 1st of January 58, Egypt and Syria decided to unite and established the United Arab Republic in order to realize the Arab unity, to renew the war and destruction of the state of Israel. And in the course of 6 months or something, about 6 months, he has to sharpen his memory, tracking and avoiding exposing, photography, including microfilm, adaptation of the area and the Arab population, study of the Islam and Arab customs, visiting mosques to learn the prayers and Quran, and they built for him a cover story. In February 61, he was sent to Argentina for 8 months. He was presented as a rich Syrian and quickly became involved in the high society in Argentina. Among his acquaintances were the editor of the Arab bilingual newspaper, Abdel Latif al-Kheshan, and the Syrian military attaché Amin al-Hafiz. After his mission there, he received letters of recommendation for VIPs in Damascus. Here, this is the places where Eli were in Argentina. This is famous coffee there. He was to sit there, and there is some clubs, very high society clubs in Argentina. And he came back to Israel at that time for about 2 or 3 weeks. Before he get to Damascus, and in September 1961, there was a military coup that took place and led to the separation of Syria from the United Arab Republic, and Reich established it as an independent state. I get this picture from the Mossad. You see here, this picture was taken in Argentina. all the military attaché serving in Buenos Aires were invited by the Argentinian government in some big hotel in Buenos Aires. And you see Eli and Amin al-Hafez, who was the military attaché at that time, with Eli here, together in this party. And I show this picture in Tel Aviv in retired officers, and I get this note from one of this audience listening to my lectures. This is the man. His name was General Yitzhak Elron. He said, I was the military attaché, Israeli military attaché in Argentina in the years 1960, 1962. And he said that he doesn't recognize Eli as an Israeli, but as a Syrian came with Amin al-Hafez. You see here. And he said, my wife is here, and my deputy also here in the same pictures. After a brief visit to Israel, a day before the end of the week of mourning for our father, Eli left Israel because my father, when Eli came to visit Israel before going to Syria, my father at that week passed away. He was ill, and just when he finished the end of the week of the morning, he left, and he was on the way to Damascus. He went to Damascus via Europe before he went to by ship to Alexandria, and from there to Lebanon, and then to Syria by land, from Lebanon by land. On December 61, on the way to Damascus, he wrote a letter to the family. He wrote, I hope that you continue to say the Kaddish for the soul of our father and safeguard the health of your mother. And he asked us to keep saying Kaddish. He said, you see, his religion feeling, because he was a candidate to be a rabbi when he was young in Alexandria. He sailed on a ship called Esperia from Genoa in Italy to Alexandria, and this ship was intended to go from Alexandria to Beirut, and this ship was a Syrian collaborator called Mach Shekhel Ard. You see his picture here in the right side of the pictures. This was the ship Esperia. They met there on the ship, and Mach Shekhel Ard had a new car received from the Mossad on this ship. And they get Eli didn't want to get out of the ship. She stopped in Alexandria, this ship, but for a while, and then continued to Beirut in Lebanon. But Mach Shekhel Ard forced him to get out in Alexandria and to bring him a mango juice. But he stayed on, left in the ship. He didn't get out of the ship. He remained in the ship and sent Eli to get to Alexandria. Eli did it, and he bring him. Why he insisted that he get out there in Alexandria to get stamp on his passport to show the Syrian that he is a real Arab, that he was also in Alexandria. This is the new car. It's called Opel Capitan, that belongs to Mad Shechlad. Before he get this, on the doors of this car, the representative of the Mossad in Belgium hide in this inside the doors all the equipment, the transmitters and all the spying articles, equipment. But I don't know if this collaborator knew about it, but then Eli took the car and get all his equipment, spying equipment from the doors of the car. But when they arrived to Beirut, Mad Shechlad connected to his friend. He named. He was an officer on the like a institution of like a CIA, not a CIA, then like an FBI in Syria. He was his friend, and he helped them to get out from Beirut to get into they get to the border between Lebanon and Syria, and he came them and helped them to get out of the border in the way to Damascus without checking at all the car. They get out of the custom without checking anything, and Mad Shechlad told Eli to pay him 800 Syrian liras, as he said to him, he helped us very much, and Eli gave him 800 liras. And they went to Beirut, from Beirut to on the way to Damascus, and Eli for the first day went to a hotel in Damascus, and Mad Shechlad went to his villa in the suburbs of Damascus. But at the night, he made a big party for Eli. He invited also some ambassadors of serving in Damascus, the ambassador of Jordan, the ambassador of Belgium, and many important persons in high society persons in Damascus. And he introduced Eli, or Kamel Amin Thaabet, as one of the richest persons in South America, and he is going to invest money, big money, in his homeland, Syria. After this party, Eli left the hotel and found an apartment looking to the headquarters of the Syrian army. He can see from his balcony if there are a car or there are some light on the night in the building of the headquarters of the army, and he can announce Israel if there is some gathering there of vehicles and there is some special situation there, and he can alert Israel if there is some danger at that time. That was a simple mission at the beginning. Yeah. Mad Shechlad introduced Eli as to to the Damascus families, to prominent Syrian political and national figures, as one of the richest members of the Arab community in Argentina. In order to promote this goal, a number of dinners were held in his honor with the participation of the Syrian elite. A few days after his arrival to Damascus, he was summoned to the Syrian broadcasting station. The head of the department of the Spanish department in Radio Damascus was George Saif, a Christian Arab, also from Argentina. He invited Eli, and he made him an interview. You can hear it. Perhaps you can also listen to the voice of Eli speaking in Arabic. This is the translation. Just the beginning of it. You can only to listen to the music and the speaking there.
كامل أمين ثابت ميات سلاحنا على صارنا حلو ونقنع اليوم في دمشق الأخ كامل أمين ثابت المطرب الشاب.
Here is the translation of the interview. Today we are in Damascus with the brother Kamel Amin Thaabet, who lives abroad, a young man who had immigrated from his country like a boy and returned to her as a man. His heart is full of love of the land, where he smiled for the first time a smile of light. He returned to her to live among her flowers in the shadow of freedom and national pride. He returned to Damascus, the city of glory and the heart of Arabness. And after a short time, he needed a very bad, he recruited collaborators without knowing that they are collaborators. The military attaché, a year after Eli arrived to Damascus, also there was a revolution, second revolution in 1963, a year after Eli arrived to Damascus, in March, 8th of March, 1963, there was a revolution, and Amin al-Hafez was called from Argentina to come back to Syria, and he first became a minister of the defense, and then he became the president of Syria. And he knew Eli from Argentina, and he was his best friends. And among his collaborators and friends was the deputy, the nephew of the chief of staff of Syria, Mossad Zahreddin. Abdel Karim Zahreddin was the general, the chief of staff of Syria, and he knew him, Mossad Zahreddin, from George Saif, the manager of the broadcasting in Damascus. He introduced him to Mossad Zahreddin, and he became his best friend. And he told him everything about the army. And he took him to the Golan Heights to see maneuvers of tanks and everything. And the head of the commander of the Golan Heights was Ziad al-Hariri. And when he saw that he came with the nephew of the chief of staff, everything was open for him. And they explained him everything, how they are what is their plan to attack Israel, and every details Eli knew and transmitted it at the morning at 8 o'clock in the morning every day to Israel. Among them was also the commander of the Syrian aircraft, and also the head of the court who sentenced him to death was his friend Salah ad-Dali. And the head of the commando, Syrian commando, also one of the judges sentenced him to death, was Salim Khattoum, was also his friend. And the deputy of the president, Nur al-Din al-Atassi, was also his friend. While Eli was in Syria, another brother of mine, Maurice, who was younger than Eli, was recruited to a unit which was responsible for the communication between Israel and their agents in Arab countries, Arabs and Jews together. And he was an encryptor. He received cables in Morse, but the cables which was broadcasted, no one can understand. It says just letters, that's no meaning at all. But he encrypted and gave meaning to the letters. And from one of the cables, from the 21st of March 62, he received a cable from agent number 566. He didn't know who is agent number 566, but it's written in this cable: normal situation in all camps, no movement to the south of our tanks. Our tanks are abandoned this morning. 4 MiGs circled Damascus several times. This was one of the first cables Eli sent to Israel, and Morris received it, but he didn't know with whom he is communicated. And Eli was told to find out what happened to one of the soldiers, that he was not declared as he was abandoned. They didn't. He was not injured. They didn't know if he was died. Nothing about him. And Eli tried to find him. Eli had a book he used for decoding his cables. He had a novel called Les Trois Mousquetaires in French, The Three Musketeers, 20 years after. This was the code book of Eli Cohen. And Morris was dealing also with this book. And also there was another spy, Israeli spy in Egypt called Wolfgang Lutz. He used another book, a novel, Anna Karenina, of Tolstoy in German. This is my brother Maurice here, you see him. And one day, he received a new cable from Eli in French. It said, "Thanks so much for the sewing machine. Did you receive my letter to Nadia from last month? Send my congratulations to Irit for her first birthday, which will apply tomorrow." It was in 5th of September 1963. From that moment, Morris discovered that he is communicating with his own brother, because he visited Nadia and he saw at the house of Eli a new sewing machine. And Nadia said proudly that she received it from Eli for her birthday. So he understood that agent number 566 is no other than his own brother. But he didn't tell his brothers or his family about this fact that he revealed at that moment. Here you see Eli with Sami al-Jundi. He was the prime minister at that time, and afterward he was sent to be as ambassador of Syria in Paris. You see how they are very close with the high society and the ministers of Syria. And here Eli with in a party with General Salah ad-Dali, who later became the head of military court, who sentenced him to death. And this was one of his last pictures in August 64, a few months before his executions. Eli Cohen in entourage in the President Amin al-Hafez at the entrance of the University of Damascus. This picture was taken on August 64. You see, this is Amin al-Hafez in the entrance of the university. You see all the soldiers here saluting Amin al-Hafez, the president, and Eli is behind the deputy of the president and Amin al-Hafez. And here is a permit to enter the Golan Heights signed by the chief of staff, Syrian chief of staff, Abdel Karim Zahreddin. This is in Arabic. I translated to English. It's written Syrian Arab Republic, the general headquarters of the army and the armed forces, intelligence department, security, number so-and-so, date 17 of October 62. Confirmation of passage to Al-Hama only. Name and number of people traveling, one only, Mr. Kamel Amin Thaabet. Nationality, Argentinian, Syrian origin. The reason of the visiting the Golan Heights is bathing. Date of departure and return in digits. The departure in 19 October 62 and return on 30 of October 32. The certificate is valid for several trips. The holder of this authorization must contact the intelligence branch in Al-Quneitra upon arrival there. This authorization must be returned after use to the headquarters of the Army and Armed Forces Intelligence Department. Signed, General Abdul Karim Zahreddin, Commander of the Army and the Armed Forces. This is now it's in our hand in the Golan Heights. This is the headquarters of the Army and its Armed Forces in Al-Quneitra in the Golan Heights. Now the permit photograph of this is on a big sign in the entrance of this building. All visitors can see the permit. While Eli was in Syria on March 8, 63, there was the revolution that I told you of the Ba'ath Party, which are in until today in power. The driving forces behind the coup was the military committee, which was controlled by Alawi's officers. In order to carry out the coup, they joined together other groups led by Ziad al-Hariri. You see his pictures here. This is Ziad al-Hariri, the commander of the Golan Heights, were the largest armored forces concentrated there in the Golan Heights. And the secret committee in the military, Syrian military, asked him to get all the tanks from the Golan Heights and come to Damascus with the tanks and occupy all the controlling point in Damascus, and they succeeded. This revolution succeeded, and until today, the Ba'ath party is ruled Syria. You see Eli with his friend Adnan El-Jabi, a 21 MiG pilot, Syrian. This was the most advanced jet in the world, even the American jet at that time. That was the most advanced Soviet jet at that time, and the Syrian received it. And Eli, with this new friend, the pilot, knew everything about this pilot, and he transmitted all the information to Israel. You see how many people gathered to see Eli together with the pilot here. Here he also get trained in get a fun flight over Damascus. You see all the people gathering here to honor Eli. Eli reported the arrival of the first T-54 tanks and other ammunition and equipment that the Syrian army received. And here you see Eli with the nephew of the chief of staff visiting the Golan Heights. And Eli recommended the Syrian to plant eucalyptus trees for protection against the blazing sun and for identification of the bunkers by the Israeli air forces. And thanks to the nephew of the military, of the chief of staff, the most important military information Eli obtained was when he accompanied the nephew of the chief of staff on a tour to El Hama. He stated the location of the important military outpost on which they passed during their travels. Eli informed Israel about everything he saw. On his trail, when he was captured, Eli answered the question of the head of the court. The head of the court asked him to which ministries and institution you were able to penetrate. And Eli said, Ministry of Information, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Municipal Affairs, the Central Bank. I visited El Hama twice, and I was present in armored maneuvers. I visited Zabadani and Baludan, Rifai from the Ministry of Economy. I knew Lieutenant Zahreddin, the nephew of the former Chief of Staff. Lieutenant Colonel Halil Safur took me to the harbor of Latakia. I made friends with Michel Sass, one of the chief engineers involved in diverting the Jordan River sources. So how he was captured? There are several versions about the reason why he was captured. The Egyptian version is that he visited the Golan Heights together with the mission from the Egyptian army, from the headquarters of the Egyptian army, and they took a picture together of the heads of the Syrian army and heads of the Egyptian army together, and the only civilian in this picture was Kamel Amin Thaabet, and these pictures was published in a newspaper, and this newspaper, according to the Egyptian version, came to an intelligence officer in Cairo. He saw this picture and he said, "This is not Kamel Amin Thaabet. This was a student in Alexandria's university. He learned together with me. We were friends. His name is Eli Cohen." And according to this version, Gamal Abdel Nasser, the president of Egypt, sent a messenger, a special messenger, to the president of Syria, and announced him about this reveal that Eli Cohen is Kamel Amin Thaabet, and he is a spy that worked before also in Egypt. This is the Egyptian version. But the president of Syria has another version. They said that Eli was living in Syria near the Indian embassy in Damascus. And the Indian embassy complained that when they were broadcasting cables to New Delhi, there was interference to their broadcasting, and they couldn't send messages to New Delhi. So they complained to the Syrian authorities, and they started to find the reason why from where came this interfering. And they sent 2 cars to try to find the sources of this broadcast. And they found Eli, and they cut him red-handed, transmitting to Israel. This is only one version of the Syrian. The other version is the head of the Syrian intelligence at that time. He's Ahmad Suidani was his name. He said totally another version. He said we were suspecting 2 Syrian people that they were spying for the United States. One named Farhan al-Atasi, and the other is named Moin al-Hakimi, major in the Navy, the Syrian Navy. Who was Farhan al-Atasi? Farhan al-Atasi was a close relative of the deputy of the president of Syria at that time, Nuruddin al-Atasi. And the first president of Syria in 1946 was also from this family, very famous family, Atasi. But he went as a student to learn in the United States and married a Lebanese originated from Lebanon, but born in the United States. And they get married there in the United States, and he studied there in the United States. But at that time, the United States was threatened by the Soviet in Cuba. All the missiles of the Soviet Union at that time were in Cuba, threatening Florida and other places in the United States. And the Soviet Union armies were superior. They have the MiG-21 and the very advanced missiles and everything. And so they saw that they had a so important person like Farhan al-Atasi, and they decided to recruit him to be a spy for them. And they sent him back with his new wife to Syria. And the head of the intelligence in Syria at that time said their mission was to try to smuggle a new missile that the Syrian Navy received from the United States to Cyprus. And they started to do this. He recruited, Farhan al-Atasi recruited his relative, who was a major in the Navy, to try to receive this missile and to smuggle it to Cyprus. But he didn't succeed to get to this missile, and he recruited another officer at the army that he served with the missiles brigade in the Navy, Syrian Navy. But he announced the Syrian authorities about his task that he was asked to bring dismissal. And they told him to cooperate with them and they will follow them to see what they are doing. So the head of the intelligence saw them visiting the house of Eli Cohen in Damascus. Farhan el-Atasi was a neighbor of Eli Cohen. At the beginning, they thought in the intelligence that because they were neighbors, they visited his house. But they started to follow them and they saw that they are working together. Eli came to Israel for the last time in end of October 1964. They let him go out because they didn't suspect him at that time. He was a very important person in Syria. But then they detained these two people because the new officers announced the authorities about them, and they arrested them, and Farhan el-Atasi hanged in Damascus 3 months before Eli, and the officer Moin al-Hakimi were shot in also as an officer because instead of hanging, he was not hanged, but he was shot by the army, and 3 months after, Eli, after his trial, was hanged in the same square in Damascus. This is Farhan el-Atasi. You see him here. And this is the Major Abdel Moin al-Hakimi. He was 63 years old, and Hakimi 43 years old. And this is the Walter Snowden. He was the second secretary in the American embassy in Syria. And when they were captured, he was expelled from Syria to the United States. And you see here Farhan el-Atasi hanged in the same square of Eli was hanged in Damascus. And we saw this in the TV when Eli already was captured, but was in the jail. Not yet. We hope that he will be rescued, but nothing helped, and he also came to his end. This is the head of the intelligence, Syrian intelligence, Ahmad Suidani, and this is the new chief of staff at the time when Eli was hanged, called Salah Jadid. He was also an Alawite from the minorities of the Syrian people in Syria.
Thank you very, very much. Wow, that is truly an absolutely amazing story. There's so many questions that have been coming in. We're going to try to get to as many as we can. What about? I want to ask about your family. Was your mother alive when he was on his mission in Syria? Did she know what he was doing, and how did she react?
Yes, my mother indeed was alive at that time. After my father passed away before he came to Syria. He passed away in 1961. But my mother was still alive at that time. At the first stages, she didn't know anything about his mission in Syria. He knew that he was in Europe working in the ministry for the Ministry of Defense, purchasing some equipment for Israel in all over Europe and so on. That is the cover story for the family at that time. But after Maurice revealed that he was spying in Syria, at the first stage he didn't say anything to the family, Maurice. But when he learned from his unit that he was captured in Syria, he told the whole family at that moment before the Syrian announced it, and the Israeli authorities told the family that he was captured. Morris told the family. I was at the army at that time, and I didn't know about it, but that he was captured. But I saw a little announcement in Hebrew, in Israeli newspaper, without name. That it was a new small announcement. Said Syria said that she captured Israeli spy without name, and I felt that it's Eli. I came home and I revealed that all the family gathered at Nadia's home, and we hoped that he will be rescued, but nothing happened, and he was hanged in 18th of May, 65.
The last letter that Eli wrote to his wife Nadia was in French. Why French and not Hebrew? What was the connection with French, and how did he know French so well enough to express himself?
I told you that he mastered about 7 languages. So French, every Egyptian Jews speak French, and
why not Hebrew to his wife?
Because he's, the Syrian didn't allow him to write in Hebrew. They wanted to know what he's writing.
So did they read
he wrote in Arabic, and he wrote two letters, one in Arabic and one in French. And but he signed in Hebrew, Eli Cohen. I will show you later the last letters. He signed in Hebrew. They didn't notice it, that it's in Hebrew. The sign.
When did it, at any point was he aware of the Syrians being suspicious of him?
Yes, because when he came to Israel, he behaved not like himself. He was very, very angry. He shouted on everything and he has no patience for anything. So he knew that he's going to his death when he returned back to Syria. The head of the Mossad at that time was, not at that time of Eli, but in one of his memorial days, named Dani Atom. The people, he gave lectures about Eli, and the people asked him, why did they send him back to Syria when they knew that he is in danger already? He said, I will ask you a question. He asked a question like all the Jews. He answered by a question. If you had an agent in Persia, in Iran, he is in the middle of the program of the nuclear program in Iran, in Tehran. What will you do with? You will send your agent back to Iran, or you rescue Israel and give him this person back to his home? It's very difficult to answer this question.
Now, as far as we know about his bravery was in this dangerous mission came from his commitment to Israel's defense and the safety of fellow Jews. Was there also an element of adventure underlying his commitment?
He was the opposite of this. He was a very shy. He played the role of the negative of him. The opposite of him. He was a very shy person. He was not so extrovert. How you call it? He was a very, he didn't. He had all his. He was very intelligent. Yes. And his friends, after his death, told us what he done for them. He was very genius, he helped them to mathematics, even Talmud, the Hebrew, everything. But he was not involved in in going with them to. He loved sport. He went to sail in the sea with, but it was not going to parties, everything, dancing. He was very shy person. But I don't know how we get this. That he trained to be the opposite of him.
What are the, we'll get to the qualities that made him a spy, but why would the Mossad take a chance when he had been known in Egypt already? Why did they take that chance?
To become an intelligence agent, the candidate must have a set of qualities, and that include creativity, loyalty to the values of the organization, and most importantly, the truth telling, because ostensibly a person returning from a task can report whatever he wants. It is important that there is also discretion, decision-making ability under pressure, the ability to distinguish between the main things to handle and building priorities, the ability to keep secret. And these are just some of the features required. Eli had all the qualities and abilities. It's written in our scripture, he who learns wisdom, by the way, also earns slyness and can use tricks for deception.
How did any of his Syrian friends try to save him from being tortured and executed at the end?
I beg your pardon, I didn't hear you.
Did any of his friends, all the friends he'd made in Syria, did any of them try to save him?
To save him?
At the end.
They wanted to save themselves before him.
What happened to all of his friends?
The nephew of the former chief of staff in Syria, he was also one of the accused in collaborating with Eli, and he was sentenced to I think 20 years in jail, and so everyone wanted to first of all save himself, So when even the judges were the friends of Eli, so what they could think? Perhaps Eli thought that he will not speak against them, they will save him, but they betrayed him. I'm now working on translating the book that the head of the court wrote about Eli, the Eli Cohen affair, and he is telling us something that I knew before from the protocols from the sentence. Eli on one of the meeting of his trial tell a story about a person. I didn't know at that time who was this person, but the head of the court in his book, a new book, said that this person wanted his daughter to be the wife of Eli, and he was a very rich person in Damascus. He has lands and everything.
Right.
And the president says, the head of the court said that he came to Eli and said, "You are a very important person in Damascus." The government nationalized, took me a lot of my lands and profit in Damascus. Please try to get it back to me, because I have lands also in Egypt and also in Syria. But when Syria and Egypt came to be a one country, they came to me and said to me, "You have to decide which lands do you want to live for you. If you want the Egyptian land or the Syria." So I decided to get the Syrian lands. Now, after the new revolution, they took almost all my lands in Syria. So please, I will give you 50,000. So Eli answered him. He said it in the court. I told him, I will bring you an interview with the Minister of Agraric Reform in Syria, and perhaps they will help you. After a month, he said, he came to me and he said to me, I will give you 50,000 sterling pounds if you can help me with this issue. And I told him, he said, in the court, he said it, the new regime, you cannot buy us by money.
Mm-hmm.
If you desire these lands, you will get it. If not, you are not. This is you have to give it to the people of Syria. That's something like this.
Before you were showing some photos of Eli being tortured. Who gave you those photos? How did you come by those photos?
It was broadcasted in all the TV, on the newspapers and magazines and all over the world. Only in Israel, when he was captured, nothing was published in Israel. No one in Israel except the family knew that an Israeli spy was captured in Syria. After his death, one day after his death, only the newspaper in Israel published this issue.
How did Kamel Amin Thaabet suddenly show up in a new community back when he was in Buenos Aires to start throwing parties and invite dignitaries? How did he start that going, to go from somebody nobody knew to somebody everybody knew? How did he accomplish that?
He has the ability. When you look at his face, you see a person, a very important person. He
he had a charisma.
Something from some charisma going from his face.
Mm.
So he get a recommendation from very important people in the Buenos Aires, and he came and he knew how to get new friends very quickly in Damascus, and he was very clever, so they admired him.
Now, I know that you've been working for a long, long time, more than 50 years, to get back the remains, to have Syria send Eli's remains back to Israel. Is it true that they have moved the remains from one place to the other because they're worried that Israel might?
Yes, because they have a good reason to worry, because there was an attempt to smuggle his remains to Israel on a month after his death. So they also, they inquired the chief rabbi of Syria at that time, and they suspected that he was collaborating with the Israeli authorities, so on and so on. So they moved the place of his burial to other place, and they said today that they don't know where is the place where he was buried. There was several attempts to smuggle his body to Israel.
Why did Israel hold back the information of his capture until later, until the day after?
Why they didn't publish it?
Yes.
There are several. It's according to my opinion. Not I don't know the real reason, but according to my opinion, at that time the prime minister was Levi Eshkol, Ben Gurion was in Sde Boker in the Negev, and always Ben Gurion was against Levi Eshkol and said that the parasha at that time, what happened in Egypt in 1954, there was also something bad for Israel at that time, and they want to inquire this story, and Eshkol didn't want at that time, because the question was who gave the order to do this in Egypt. And he didn't want Eshkol another story that will brought him out of power at that time. This is the political reason. But there is what they said to the family. They told us not to talk about it with anyone, because it will be bothering not the effort to rescue him. They are going to do secret steps and so on. So I don't know why they didn't. But everyone could look at Time magazine or New York Times or whatever, and they can see it. I don't know. It's something stupid. I don't know the real reason.
Now, there are many videos and movies about your brother, The Impossible Spy. There's the Spy series on Netflix. Did they need permission from the family? Where did they get all of their information? Did Mossad help them with the information, help the movie companies with the information about Eli's story?
They didn't contact me at all. The Netflix is something even not a little bit familiar with Eli. It's something, it's a combination between Tarzan, James Bond, and Borat.
What did you think? Have members of your family seen the Netflix special, the Netflix show?
No, it's not a documentary. It's something it's good for the Americans. I don't know. It's American movie. It's nothing that they said it's relied on the book of Ben Porat, Ishayahu Ben Porat and Uri Dan, but nothing familiar with this book. They just create. Even they said that the basic detail, the year that he was born. They said at the beginning of the movie, they said Eli was born in 1915. My father was 10 years old at that time.
No. I don't think they said Eli was born in 1915. That was Thaabet. I think they were saying that Thaabet's identity.
No. Thaabet was, according to that, to the real story, he was born in 1930. He was 10 years younger than his real age. In Syria,
was there any attempt by the IDF to rescue him during the trial or after the trial?
Yes, I told you that there was some attempt to try to. I don't know if the IDF, perhaps. I from the newspaper, I knew that the French were involved in that.
Were there international calls for him not to be executed?
There was a very big campaign all over the world. There are not thousands, but perhaps hundreds of letters from very high ranked persons all over the world. The Queen of Belgium, the Queen of England, the many presidents all over the world. Eli was also a Freemason, so he was a religious person and also Freemason. So it's an international, order, and they used all a very important person beg for mercy to him and not to to execute him. But the Syrian wanted to not to reveal their cooperation with Eli, so they decided to get rid of him.
Now, Eli never talked about his being a spy to anybody, right? We don't know of anyone who ever discussed it. The only time he discussed it was in the courtroom. Is that correct?
I didn't understand you again, please.
That Eli never discussed what he did with anyone ever, except the only time he ever discussed it, I imagine, was in the courtroom when they asked him questions.
You mean in Israel or in Syria?
Anywhere. Did he discuss it with anyone anywhere?
He knew how to keep, all his life he kept secrets. When he was in Egypt, he kept secret from the family because we didn't know that he is working for the intelligence while we were in Egypt. Even I told you before that my brother asked him for help to get the document to get out of Egypt. He said that he is not connected to this at all. But only 10 years after his death, the prime minister revealed these facts.
What do his children do today?
What?
What do Eli's children do today?
His the daughter, the big, she is a psychologist. She has own clinic, and the boy learned architectures. I don't know if he is dealing with it or something else. And the youngest daughter, she is she is working at a kindergarten.
Did Nadia know anything that was going on at any time?
Yes, when Morris told her about this, but it's only on the last stages, not at the beginning. The beginning, everyone was envy about Eli because he said, I am going to Europe, to Switzerland, to Germany, to Italy, to Belgium, and everyone want to be Eli Cohen, making life, good life.
And so we have no idea what he couldn't celebrate Jewish holidays, obviously, when he was in Argentina or in Damascus.
A very special story about this. Some new immigrant from Syria, a Jewish woman, on one of there are tours in the Golan Heights. She told the guide of the tour at that time that she said that they had in Damascus souvenir shops or something there in Damascus. And Eli entered to this shop to buy something. And they said to the owner, who was a Jew, I'm very hungry, give me something, do you have something to eat? He said to him, now is Pesach, we have no bread, we have only matzah. He said, what is matzah? Never mind, give me matzah, what is it? And the woman said that he get away, and he murmured something, and they ate the matzah.
Wow, that's an incredible story. How old was he when he was chosen by the Mossad?
When he went to Syria, when he came to Israel, he was 33 years old. When I came to Israel, I was 3 years old. So, no, yes, because we came 8 years before him. He stayed in Egypt. So when he was recruited to the Mossad, 33 and plus 8, it was about 40 years old.
How did your mother react when she heard that he had been caught?
What?
How did your mother react when she heard that he had been caught by the Syrians?
How she reacted? She was very upset. we all were, we beginning the morning when he was captured, not when he was died. They gave us a TV for a short time, but a short time before his hanging, they took the TV back. But Morris worked, in intelligence unit, so he gave us a newspaper from Arab countries, and we saw everything. And my mother always hold a transistor radio, on her. Even she didn't go to sleep. Even sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning, he said, "Oh, they get a new announcement about Eli." That was the situation at that time. Very bad situation. 101 days until he was hanged.
Did he spend any time? How much time did he get to spend with his wife and children?
I didn't understand the question.
How much time did Eli get to spend? How many years did he get to spend with his wife and children?
Very short period. He was married on 59, on August, end of August 59. And on 61, he went to Argentina for 7 months or 8 months in Argentina. Then when he came back, he stayed 1 month in Israel and went to Syria. And he was about 4 years in Syria.
Did Syria allow him to call Nadia before the execution?
To call Nadia?
Yeah.
To call Nadia to come to Damascus?
No. To speak to her the last time. Did they allow him to speak to his wife before the execution?
Not at all. Even she tried, Nadia and my brother Ephraim went to Paris to try to go to the Syrian embassy in Paris and try to meet the ambassador, Samuel Jundi, who was also one of the friends of Eli in Syria. And he refused to meet them. And even the Mossad recruited 2 famous advocates in France to try. He traveled to Damascus, and they promised him, but at the beginning, that they will allow him to be his attorney in his trial. But the last moment, they hanged him and didn't get him or even meet Eli Cohen.
If he was posing as a rich, eligible bachelor when he was there, how did he avoid being in compromising situations without it being strange? Was that part of his acting ability?
Now I translated the chapter talking about this issue. You said his friends. This is what the head of the court saying in his book. Said it's a sin that you are a bachelor so much time. He said to him, yes. I will introduce you to the person Abu Mahmoud. He said, this is the owner of the lands in Syria that I told you before. And he said to him, the head of the court said that Eli sent the cable to Israel to take advice what to do. They are forcing him to marry. They said according to what the head of the court said, that the Mossad answered him that to try to postpone the answer for a better time or something like this. So he was in pressure, from all over the directions. It's not normal that you cannot live like this. You are. It's like a schizophrenic. You have two personalities or something.
Did Nadia ever remarry?
No, he asked her to remarry, to get father to the children. That's what he wrote to her, but she didn't do that.
Were there any other slides you still wanted to show us?
What?
Were there any other slides you still wanted to show us?
You can see the last letter of him. I translated to English. If you want. He wrote, "To my dear wife Nadia and my dear parent, I am writing to you these last words a few minutes before my end, and I would like to beg you to be in good relationship forever. I request you, dear Nadia, to pardon me and take care of yourself and our children. Look after them truly, bring them up and give them a complete education. Don't deprive them or yourself of anything. Please be always in close communication with my dear parent. You can get married in order not to deprive the children of a father. You have a full liberty to do so. I am begging you, my dear Nadia, not to spend time in weeping about something already past. Concentrate on yourself, looking forward for a better future. I am sending my last kisses to you and to the children, Sophie, Irit, and Shaul. Also to all my family, especially to my mother, my sister Odette and her family, Maurice and his family, Ezra and his family, Sarah and her family, Sion and his family, Alfred, Ephraim and his family, and the end to Beru, Avraham. Don't forget also your dear family. Give them my best regards. Don't forget to pray for the soul of my late father and of mine."
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Rabbi Cohen.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yes. So first of all, Abraham, thank you very much. What I would like to ask, a question that I've been receiving questions here from various people, and that is, Avraham, did the Mossad take care of Nadia and the family for the rest of her life? Which means that because Eli was a Mossad agent and he fell in battle, he fell during service, is there a guarantee that the life of Nadia will be secured for the rest of her life?
Yes, and the economically side, yes, of course, but she received the salary of a pensioner of the army. He gets the rank of a lieutenant colonel in the
rank
army.
of. You said he received the rank of
lieutenant colonel in
colonel.
Yes.
Colonel.
And she received the family of a pensioner of a lieutenant colonel, and the salary every month. But the question is not economically. She didn't marry. She's she's attacking everyone at 365 degrees all over the family, not the family, everyone.
So did she make a campaign herself, Nadia, to get the remains of her husband? Did she lead a campaign? Did she do something?
My father Maurice also made a big campaign in the United States and all over the world. And he wrote a letter in Arabic to the president of Syria at that time, the father of Bashar al-Assad, Hafez al-Assad. But nothing happened. I don't know if there is a body at all. They are very cruel, the Syrian. But Eli, you can compare it to Moses. He never even didn't live enough in Israel. He lived for Israel. He was a very short time in Israel. All his life was spent in over the border, and he was buried also. We don't know where he's buried, like Moses.
Wow, yeah.
The body is not important. The spirit is important,
But we just know that he was brought to Mount.
Now the school of spies in the Mossad is on the name of Eli. You see the sculpture of Eli also. You see this?
No?
You can see the presentation? Ask Yossi. Perhaps Yossi can do something for this.
Yeah.
There. Share a screen.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
המדרשה על שם אלי כהן, השם ייקום דמו.
נכון. And here it's also a commemoration beside the sculpture of Eli Cohen. It's written in Hebrew, Eli Cohen, Hashem Yikom Damo, was born in Alexandria in 6th of December 1924. He immigrated to Israel when he was 33 years old. And in 1960, he was recruited to the intelligence unit, which later annexed to the Mossad and was sent to Syria for a secret mission. And on his 3 years in Damascus, he acted solely and courageously and developed ties with the elite of the army and the government, and transferred to Israel very important information which contributed to the victory in the Six-Day War. He was captured and hanged in the Malja Square in Damascus on the day of 18th of May 65, and not yet brought to Israeli not yet buried in Israel. And Eli is counted with those warriors, secret warriors that fight with their body courageously and risk themselves on the territory of the enemy for the sake of the security of Israel. Yehi Zichram Baruch. That's what's written there. This was written on 18th of May 2005. They decided to rename the school of the spies on his name.
So this is the academy that trains spies by the Mossad?
What is the question?
This academy that was named in the memory of Eli trains spies.
The name of Eli, yes.
Uh-huh. And didn't I hear that Putin got involved with Syria to try and get Eli Cohen's remain to Israel? Or I read it somewhere. Putin...
I read it on the newspaper, but I didn't know nothing. I don't know nothing about it, if it was true or not. I think that I get a letter from one of his neighbors in Syria. He thought that he sent me a letter by email a few years ago, and he said that his body was. I don't know him to believe him or not, but according to what he said in this letter, he said that his body was given to a student of medicine to practice on his body.
How many years ago was that?
It was after I was first time in the United States, not in the United States, but in Chabad in 2011.
So 9 years ago.
Yes.
But you don't know if it's true.
I don't know, but he wrote some details that characterized the character of Eli and everything. So I try to believe him. I don't know if it's 100% correct, but he looks like someone he admired Eli, because he said that his relatives were also detained with Eli, and Eli didn't say anything wrong about them. He said he saved their lives. Even he was in a worse situation, he saved their lives. That's what he wrote to me.
Right. Okay, so I have to tell you, Avraham Cohen, this is a fascinating story. I was glued to my laptop, throughout, and I'm sure. I just want you to know that we have, according to the numbers of Facebook, we had 410 interested and 228 attending, which means this is the biggest attendance of a Facebook lecture that we've had. From all the past lectures that we've had, this is by far the biggest attendance that we had so far. We have obviously more lectures coming up, but this is by far the most attended lecture. And therefore, I have to thank you. I want to thank you, Mr. Avraham Cohen.
Rabbi, I want you to show this the end of the presentation.
Okay, go ahead.
If you can show it to the audience.
Wow.
Today,
today the Syrian people would prefer Eli as president.
Wow.
This is like fascinating. Like, where does this come from?
No, I took the head of Amin Thaabet, and I put not Amin Bashar al-Assad, and I put the head of Eli Cohen to be this was the picture of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. So I think this is fake news.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, perfect. So I want to thank you, Avraham Cohen. It was fascinating information. I want you to know people were glued to their screens. I want to thank our moderator, Tommy. You did a fantastic job. People were really excited to hear from all the comments we've had and from all the questions that people were sending one after the other, and from the attendance, and from the people who said they're interested into the event. And as I said before when we started, this event, number one, is free of charge. But anybody who is interested to give a donation for the Chabad Seminary, our Chabad Seminary is only seminary for girls. We teach young women to become teachers and to become directors around the world. The Chabad houses around the world, of which 5,600 Chabad houses around the world, many of them, the women who are the wives of the rabbis, need to be trained. So one of the training centers around the world is our training center in Montreal, to teach the girls what is it, how to approach other people, how to bring people back into the fold, how to get them interested in Yiddishkeit and Judaism. And Mr. Cohen, Avraham Cohen, your presentation and the pride of being Jewish that your brother displayed and portrayed throughout his life and gave up his life for Am Yisrael is the ultimate goal of what it means to be there for another Jew, to be there for another human being, to be there for the benefit of somebody else. And your brother portrayed it with selflessness and selfless dedication and selfless interest for the betterment of humankind and for the betterment of his fellow Jews. So I really, really appreciate your efforts and your and all of your information. We're up to the grand finale. We have a beautiful rendition of Misheberach Avotenu Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, sung by I believe it's a group, either Israeli soldiers or Israeli citizens, but it's put together by definitely by our Israeli boys. Yes, sorry, this Ariel Horowitz. And I'd like this is the before we actually put it on, Yossi, just 1 minute before we put it on, I want to wish everybody, each and every one of our viewers, Ktiva v'chatima tova, a good Gebench Tiyar. May God bless all of you with briut, long life, health, peace of mind, and shalom and peace for all of us in Israel and in diaspora, and that whoever needs a refuah shelama from the coronavirus or from any other kind of ailment, may Hashem bring about a complete, speedy recovery for all of you, and may we all experience a good life, and may we all experience a healthy life for the coming new year, 5781 Tav Shin Pei Aleph. Yossi, take it away. Mishaberach Avotenu.
Mishaberach Avotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov, Hu yevarech et chayalei tzva hagana leYisrael. Hu yevarech et chayalei tzva hagana leYisrael. Ha'omdim al mishmar arzenu ve'arei Elokeinu migvul הלבנון ועד מדבר מצרים ומן הים הגדול עד לבוא הערבה ביבשות באוויר ובים הוא יברך את חיילי צבא הגנה לישראל. הוא יברך את חיילי צבא הגנה לישראל. ייתן נא השם את אויבינו הקמים עלינו ניגפים לפניהם. הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור ויציל את חיילינו מכל צרה וצוקה ומכל נגע ומחלה, וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם, ידבר שונאינו תחתיהם, ויתרם בכתר ישועה ובעטרת ניצחון, ויקוים בהם הכתוב כי יד השם אלוקיכם ההולך עמכם להילחם לכם עם אויביכם להושיע אתכם ונאמר
Shana Tova, everybody, a good and blessed year. K'tiva v'chatima tova to you, Avraham, Tommy, to all of our viewers. May we experience the ultimate year of redemption with Mashiach Tzidkenu. Just to keep all of you in touch. Our next lecture will be with one of the top commandos of the Entebbe raid, 90 minutes in Entebbe. We're going to have Sassi Ruben, who was one of the elite commandos who actually came in and rescued the 110 or 111 hostages from the Air France in Entebbe. Please keep in touch. We're going to be in touch through our Facebook and through our emails with our next lecture. Don't miss it. It'll be a fascinating lecture by one of the commandos of the Entebbe raid that saved all of our Jewish hostages in Entebbe. Be well, Shana Tova. Have a great, great evening, and great week, and great year.